Okay, so we're going to begin the next part of our meeting with Bruce Clemmons, who's the manager at the FedEx Live Animal Desk. And Bruce brings with him much experience. He's currently serving on a variety of transportation boards, so a lot of industry experience. And he's going to talk to us about IATA and how air cargo is controlled. Bruce?
Thank you. Everybody get in here. This is going to be fascinating. Oh, thank you. Oh, don't take my book. I want to make just a point of clarification. My paying job is manager of the FedEx Live Animal Desk. I'm not here representing FedEx today. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the IATA Live Animal and Perishables Board. So if you have any questions about my real paying job, give me a call next week and we can talk about that. Like I said, I have the honor of being the chair of the IATA Live Animal and Perishables Board. I've been the chair since October of 2010. I took over from Mr. Piddleco, and I started serving on the IATA LAPB in 1998 when Mr. Cole was the chair. So I think we have 3 of the past 4 chairmen of the Nico Volzik from former Lufthansa was the other one. He had a brief stint. So they will, I'm just going to sit down and let them do the presentation, actually.
Not a problem, Bruce.
And they could probably do it. I've learned a lot from them, but they haven't taught me everything they know, unfortunately. So it was said earlier, but who knows what IATA stands for? And you guys can't answer. You can't answer either. IATA is the International Air Transport Association. And just what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about IATA and air cargo, our regulations and standards, our specific requirements, and touch some on specifically laboratory animals and the CITES guidelines for non-air transport of live wild animals and plants. So the first part is IATA and air cargo. It's interesting about air cargo because IATA has 2 sections, right? They've got the passenger section, which is probably 80% of the focus of IATA. IATA is in Geneva, Switzerland, headquartered, also in Montreal. And then they have the cargo section, which is probably 20%, if that, of the focus for IATA. But they intersect, in fact, that a lot of cargo goes on passenger airlines, as Greg and Carl was commenting on earlier. In fact, 777 passenger plane, how many pounds of cargo do you think can go in the lower compartments of a 777 passenger plane? Anybody have a guess? A lot is a good guess. It is actually, depending on where it's going to, 100,000 pounds of cargo can go in a 777 passenger plane, which is the equivalent of 2 757 freighters. So they're really intermixed when you talk about passenger and cargo because they cross paths. IATA is the industry leader for the air transport in the world. Founded in 1945 with 240 members, so it's about 84% of the airlines in the world belong to IATA. I don't think Southwest is a member, JetBlue. Some of the low-cost carriers are not members. They've decided not to participate, but most of the major airlines in the world, around the world, belong to IATA, such as Air France, Lufthansa, Emirates, all the major national airlines are IATA members. And IATA's mission is to represent, lead, and serve the air transport industry. And to do that, they deliver standards and solutions to ensure a successful air transport. I'm not going to use this laser pointer because I might burn somebody's eye out, so I hope that's okay. Air cargo started 90 years ago with mail, so it's been a long time that cargo has been moving by mail. And I think actually animal transport started just shortly after that. So animals have been transported by air for a very long time. And air cargo is still an essential engine of growth today in the world's economy. There's general cargo, which is boxes, machine parts and things, and there's special cargo, such as perishables, pharmaceuticals, and live animals. The value of air cargo is about 35% of what goes worldwide, but it's only about 0.5% of volume, so very high value shipments that go. And of course, the reason that people use air cargo is because of the speed reliability, especially for animals. As you know, the less time they're in transit, the less stress on the animals. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how IATA is structured on the cargo side. There's the cargo committee, which is like the overall overseeing branch of that, and underneath that is the Cargo Procedures Conference Management Group. They have some big names in IATA and big initials. And under that is the Cargo Services Conference and the Cargo Agency Conference. Greg, weren't you on the Cargo Services Conference also?
And on the management.
So they are really the oversight group for the live animal group. And I'm not going to read all that. You know, if you're interested in that, I just want to give you a sense of some of the structure of IATA. Then under the Cargo Services Conference, there's these various groups, including the Dangerous Goods Board, the LAPB, the ULD panel. ULDs are unit load devices. That's the cookie sheets or the containers that boxes or animals go in when they're transported and they're locked into the floor. The airmail panel, the Cargo Businesses Practices panel. I'm not sure what they do. But, and then there's also the ones that... Airway bill, okay. Documentation, yes, okay. Standardizing that. They're working on the electronic air bill, so I should know that. And then FIATA is the Forwarders International Air Transport Association. So, pardon? I'm sorry. So that a good portion of the cargo that flows in the world goes through a freight forwarder. So, especially in air cargo. So that's recognized by IATA. So we have a partnership with FIATA to make things go smoother. And then underneath are some of the groups that IATA interacts with, the UN, CITES, OIE, and various other organizations. So it's try to be a collaborative organization. Specifically, the Cargo Services Conference is over the Live Animal and Perishables Board. And just for your information, that we also have a group under us called the Time and Temperature Task Force, which is basically, they work on pharmaceutical issues because pharmaceuticals have become such a big part of what's moving by air nowadays. Correct, Judy? And the way it works is that there's 12-member airlines on the Live Animal and Perishables Board. Some of the current members are Lufthansa, Air France, Cargolux, pardon? Delta, among others. So those are voted on by the Cargo Services Conference. So they tell us who's going to be on the Live Animal and Perishables Board. Airlines can nominate a person from their organization to be that is voted on by the Cargo Services Conference. And then we vote on the Time and Temperature Task Force members. The Time and Temperature Task Force is unique because it's just not airlines as part of that. It's manufacturers, it's ground handlers, it's NGOs, people like that. So it's just not airlines. So the LAPB, we have actually two groups that really help us develop the live animal regulations. And that's our advisory panel, which consists of currently WAZA, which is the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums in the U.S., PJAC, which is the Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council, which Marshall Myers is here. He's actually our representative. Where'd Marshall go to? He's back there. OIE and ATA is the Animal Transport Association. So they are our advisory group. And then also we have the Animal Care Team, which are industry experts. So Bill White is actually on the Animal Care Team. And the reason we have these groups is we realize we're really good at moving things from point A to point B. We're not necessarily experts on animals, nor do we want to be on that. It's prohibitive. So we need people to advise us when we're making these regulations because, again, it has more impact than just what we do. It has impact on what you do as providers when you're interacting with us. And this is our publication. This is Live Animal Regulations. This comes out every year. There's always changes. It's an evolutionary document. It's a living, breathing document. So we're always making changes to improve this. And we meet twice a year as a board where we talk about mainly changes in the live animal regulations. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes between those two meetings. And a lot of that is done by our animal care team who are, as we got proposals going back and forth, they're commenting on them and we get a lot of input on things. So it's, I know Bill has had a pretty busy couple months with some of the changes we've made for the upcoming edition that's coming out in January. And I touched on it briefly, but our standards are not set in isolation. Again, we're not experts on that. We want to bring in other members to it. And one change I think we started under Carl was that our meetings were pretty closed, and you had to be invited to come to the meetings. So what we started to do is say we opened it up to whoever wanted to come. They had to let us know they were coming, so we made sure we had enough space, but we wanted more participation. We didn't want to make bad decisions. We wanted to get information. So, and Greg continued that, and I certainly support that anybody's welcome to come to one of our meetings. Anybody can comment in our meetings and offer suggestions or critiques or criticisms on it. The only thing observers can't do is when we vote on something, they can't vote. That's only done by the board. But we really do value that input because we want to make the law as good as it can be. We try to base any changes in the law on science. Unfortunately, there's not always a lot of science in air transport. There's some, and we've used it, but generally there's not. So the other thing we use is operational experience, where carriers or freight forwarders or any kind of person involved in live animal shipping has some experience with the type of crate they've used or some suggestions on things. And so we take that into account when we're making the changes. Greg showed earlier the picture of the dog crate with the door ajar on it about escapes. We have spent probably the last 2 years talking about the gauge of the wire on the front of dog kennels. It's like, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? I know more about wire gauge than I ever cared to know. And it seems, unless you step back, it seems kind of silly. Why all this intent? But the problem is dogs escape, and if they escape, as Greg pointed out, they can do a lot. They'll do damage to themselves, and they'll do damage to the aircraft. I mean, aircraft have been out of service for weeks because of damage by escaped animal, and that's big money to an airline. Again, as I said, we have 2 meetings a year where we discuss the industry proposals. Our next meeting, if anyone's interested, we're going to be in Singapore November 3rd through 5th, correct, on that. So if anybody wants to come to Singapore and participate, you're more than welcome. This is an example of one of the illustrations for our container requirements in the law. This is actually a white whale transport. Again, part of the law is, too, we have these illustrations in here. A lot of times people will try to build it exactly like this. And we try not to be too prescriptive on how you build, because animals vary in size and weight and temperament, so you have to make allowances for that. So the container requirements and the law are really the minimum specifications. It's got to meet the minimum specifications. If you want to make it better than that, go ahead, but it gives you at least some guidelines on how to build it. And ultimately what should happen is that if you're a shipper, you should have a conversation with the airline about the container you're using and whether it can fit on the aircraft safely. But there should be a conversation even before you're building it like that. And it tells you how to measure. Like here's a lizard telling you how to measure it. The marking and label requirements. I'll get into that a little bit more detail in a slide here. These are typical requirements for the container. What materials to use. Should it be plywood or metal or the mesh for the dog kennel or whatever. The dimensions. I'm not going to go through and read all those because you can read them yourselves. But also what to do with your animal before you bring it to the airline. Do you feed it? Do you water it? Any instructions along the way for feeding and watering if it becomes delayed. It's critical for a lot of animals, and just the general care and loading of the animal. This one, density guidelines here. Again, Bill spent a lot of time in the past couple of years reworking some of the density guidelines we had. That's one thing we discovered, that what we had in there wasn't really based in reality, I guess, or things have changed over time. So Bill, with some help of some other folks, have gone through and changed the density guidelines for some of the animals we ship. We actually have a specific container requirement in the live animal regulations for laboratory animals. It's CR 84 in there, and it's for SPF lab animals. And we also have a chapter in here just solely dedicated to laboratory animals, chapter 12. So that's rather unique in the live animal regulations, that we have a specific chapter devoted to the specific needs of transporting lab animals. And you see up there is the, again, an example of what an SPF container should look like. Again, doesn't have to look exactly like that, but it needs to meet the minimum specifications for that. And again, this is container requirement 84. It applies to gerbils, guinea pigs, hamsters, mice, rats. And you see underneath, also in the live animal regulation, if not familiar, it says state variation. So a lot of countries have specific regulations for what they can or cannot take, or how you can enter something into their country. So there's a section in here where you can go back and reference those if you're shipping to a particular country. The U.S. has one in there. You need to go in and check on those before you ship. And also, see at the bottom, it says operator variation. Certain carriers have restrictions or limitations on what they'll do as far as the Pacific carriers. So American and Qantas are two that have some specific requirements as far as the transportation of lab mice or gerbils. I was happy that Dr. Kennedy, when he asked I got that answer right for the number of species. I was really worried that I was going to miss that one, so I was very happy about that. I have not gone through and counted them, nor shall I. So I'm just going to. Bill actually counted them, so he said that's correct. So. And also, just I think in the past year, wasn't it, Bill, that CITES has actually approved the live animal regulations for the non-air transport of CITES species. So that's an illustration of how well regarded our live animal regulations are. The CITES has decided to adopt that in the transport. And Rob's going to touch on a little bit in his talk about the live animal regulations are actually part of the law in the European Union. And actually, it's referenced in the U.S. law also under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So one that we're very conscious of when we're making changes, that we know that the changes we make have a pretty broad effect. So we take what we do very seriously in the board, and we try to make the best decisions we can. So let's see. What else I have? I'm not going to read all that. So that's it. So we're going to have a question and answer period here after this. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that was informative for you.